This is Alexandra during the closing minutes of episode 1 of season 2 of 1923. She's boarding a ship set for New York City, and from there, she hopes to catch a train to Montana. Girl, if it were only that simple.
I'm off on the next adventure.
Her husband Spencer is also on a ship, but sadly it's not the same ship. I'm not going to make you wait forever to hear about the secret that Alex is keeping. This video will also explain why Jacob and Jack went to Bozeman for a trial. It's part of a larger plot that was sort of shoehorned into the last episode of season 1 of 1923. So, if you're foggy on who Zane is and what his wife did, I got you. There was also a really significant update at home for Jacob and Kara that had to do with this scene from episode 8.
Hefty penny you owed. As I'm sure you're aware, if I'm not repaid by the end of the year, the deed reverts to me.
And maybe most interesting, I think I figured out how the show ends. No joke, but I'll warn you, you're gonna hate this theory. I kinda hate it myself, but all signs point to a very, very tragic ending for one couple on this show. It also explains how we get to John Dutton, as played by Kevin Costner in Yellowstone. Time code's in the description section below, but now let's talk about Alex. Spoiler alert warning. Subscribers who watched our episode 1 preview video mostly agreed with our theory that Alexandra was pregnant. I got a lot of comments like this one from @BM2228 who said, quote, "I think Spencer is the predecessor of John Dutton II. That now seems even more likely because
I'm running out of time. You're pregnant.
So, episode 1 finds her in a bit of a jam. She's back home in Sussex in England, and because her royal family doesn't support her marriage, they won't pay for her travel to America to be with the man she loves. Additionally, she knows that if the family finds out she's pregnant, it'll further tarnish her name. I guess when your Yankee husband kills the man that you're set to marry, the neighbors start to look at you strange. Go figure. This girl, Jennifer, helps out big time. They're best friends, so Jennifer sells a whole bunch of family jewels to get Alex the money she needs to get to America. Problem solved, right? Yes, for now, but I want to direct your attention to this clip from the season 2 trailer, which seems to show Alex getting caught up with the beggars and thieves we previously mentioned.
My wife is lost to me.
Spencer doesn't know Alex is pregnant. I mean, how could he? They were ripped from one another after he gave Arthur the heave-ho. Now he's working in the boiler room of a ship to afford passage back to America. He's also befriended a young Italian named Luca, played by Andy Dispenza, and don't confuse this Luca with Luca the tugboat captain, played by Peter Stormare in season 1. It's a different Luca. I guess that was a popular name.
You could sell that big gun.
You don't need that big gun.
You could fight for the money.
Don't fight for money.
Lion hunting is fighting, no?
It's fighting for survival. Don't fight for sport.
I found Spencer's need for money a little odd because he seemed to have plenty of it when he was traveling around with Alex, but I digress. This was a good character building episode for Spencer. He and Luca team up after Spencer saves him from a man who had been sexually assaulting him. He then saves Luca again, this time from killing himself during a really satisfying scene shot on the deck of the ship. Luca's pretty smart, and he starts to manage Spencer's burgeoning fighting career. He's like Italian Don King or something. That nets Spencer $420, which the internet tells me is like $7,500 today. It should be all the money he needs to get to New York City and then to Montana. As episode 8 ends, he looks to be pulling into a Long Island port. Anyone else celebrate that a little bit? I mean, just get this man home already. Back home, there's not much going on at the ranch because it's winter. The double mountain lion scenes gave me all kinds of anxiety about ever traveling to Montana in the winter.
I need to know, are you up here to get warm, or are you on your next meal?
Jacob is fully healed, so he and Jack head to town to witness the trial of Zane and Zane's wife, who are accused of miscegenation. And I'm gonna stop here, but not for too long. Miscegenation is when people of two different ethnic backgrounds make a baby, and that's illegal in Montana in 1923. Zane's wife is Asian. I believe she's Chinese, but honestly, the action that got us here came about so quickly at the end of season 1 2 years ago. I'm a little foggy on the details. Here's a clip from that episode.
You're under arrest for violating Montana statute against miscegenation.
Against what?
We know that Donald Whitfield is behind all of this, but Jacob doesn't know that for sure, even though the sheriff suspects it.
Said Whitfield. I know it is. He's gonna knock all your chess pieces off the board.
The trial will come next week, and that conversation between the sheriff and Jacob took place in an illegal speakeasy. If you recall, prohibition was a thing in Montana in 1923, and that makes this moment kind of hilarious.
Marshal out of Helena called and said they got an anonymous tip that there's a speakeasy off of Main Street.
You don't say.
Yep.
You have any luck finding it?
The investigation's just getting started. These things take a while. Another whiskey, Charlie?
One other note from the speakeasy palaver is that we learned Jacob had paid Donald Whitfield the back taxes he owed him, thus getting him off his back for a little while. At the beginning of the episode, we learned they sold the herd to do it. I mentioned an episode preview video earlier, and that's something that we do weekly, in addition to the Dutton Rules audio podcast, which is available wherever you podcast. Last week I had a crazy kind of theory that Alexandra may never make it to Montana, and yeah, people did not love that. Staff at tasteofcountry.com, or you can just comment here if you want to weigh in. I'm going to back off that slightly now because a more realistic ending for Spencer and Alex is obvious if you know what to look for and if you know how Taylor Sheridan shows work. That's coming in about 1 minute, but first we need to talk about Teona Rainwater, who had a pretty good day, right? She and Pete consummate the relationship after her dad more or less gives her permission to do it. The speed of which she ran off had me and my wife cracking up on the couch on Sunday.
I'm just gonna go sit by Pete while he hunts.
New Pete is Jeremy Guana because actor Cole Brings Plenty died last year. I thought that was a pretty nice tribute at the start of the episode for Cole Brings Plenty. They mostly stay out of trouble in this episode, but we learned that they went a little too far south and wound up in a ranch in Texas owned by Charles and Marianne Goodnight, who were real ranchers and in fact are pretty famous. Their house is now in the National Register of Historic Places, and once again this is Taylor Sheridan tipping a hat to cowboy legends. Kind of love it when he does this. It does feel like Father Reynaud and his men are closing in on Teona, however, and I really hated that scene where the marshal kills that little Native American girl, so I'm not going to make you watch that again. My wife actually had to leave the room, and I don't blame her. I'll say this, though. It seems like the marshal and the priest could be becoming enemies, and I'm going to say the same thing about Banner and Donald Whitfield.
Lives, we've had nothing. Now we have something, and it ain't fleas. We have money. Soon we'll have land, and that boy will have a future. I'll live with the devil to give him that.
I won't be mad if Banner kills Don quick, but that seems pretty unlikely. If you don't think this dude is an absolute monster, please let me know why in the comments section below. I'd also love your response to this theory of how we get to Kevin Costner's John Dutton, which is sort of the unsaid point of this whole show, right? Adison Haager from the Dutton Rules podcast is joining me now to discuss a 1923 hot take, and Adison, I think I've got it figured out. Let me ask you a question off the top, though. Do you think that there's a happy ending for these two? Do you think that ultimately they ride off into the sunset, raise babies together, live old, and die happy?
I don't think that they die happy. I think, and you can let me know if I can share this about our interview with Julia. I do think they both make it to Montana at some point. I do feel like Spencer, for whatever reason, after maybe meeting, I don't know. I don't think he's ever going to live to see the child born.
So here's what I think is going to happen. And then I'm going to explain why there's a number of things we already know that fit within this theory.
Okay.
I think to a certain degree, you're right. I think they're going to make it to Montana. I don't think Spencer's going to live to see the babies born. I also don't think Alex is going to live much past the birth. What I think is going to happen is the baby will be born and will be adopted by Jack and Elizabeth. And there's another number of reasons why this makes a lot of sense. First of all, adoption, a big theme in the Yellowstone universe, right? They really sort of normalize it. Jacob and Kara adopted Spencer and Jack. John Dutton adopted Jamie Dutton, so that fits. Maybe Jack and Elizabeth named this baby, and they would name it John, perhaps to honor Jack's late brother, who was killed just a year ago. Then the naming fits. Why we have that skip of Johns, and the Dabney Coleman John Dutton is not the same as Spencer's brother John Dutton. So that makes sense. Then I think about Beth Dutton. It would make a lot of sense if she was named after Elizabeth Dutton, her grandmother or great-grandmother. I didn't exactly do the math on all of this. This theory also solves the biggest sort of family tree plot hole in, like, if Spencer's the father of this baby, then we have to have a generation skip. There has to be another generation between Spencer and who we know as John Dutton, Kevin Costner's father, like a mystery generation that we know. This solves all of that now because it's essentially Spencer's kid who then has John Dutton, aka Kevin Costner. But I think the biggest reason for all of this is Spencer and Alex, they're such star-crossed lovers. They're Romeo and Juliet. Like, everything about this love story and how, like, Taylor Sheridan delivers love stories, i.e. Elsa and Sam and Elsa and Ennis, the cowboy before them. Like, it just never ends well. You cheer for these great romantic stories that always end in heartbreak. This allows it to end in heartbreak, a la Romeo and Juliet, but it also allows sort of that family tree to sort of continue through Jack and Elizabeth.
But how does Alex die?
Well, I don't know how any of them die. But I mean, pick her poison, right? She's got to get from England to Montana, a country where she knows nothing about the wilderness. She doesn't know anything about wolves and mountain lions and, like, the cold and all this treachery, plus all these people trying to kill the family. Like, there's a million ways she could die.
Maybe she dies in childbirth.
She could die in childbirth, yeah.
But that just would make sense of, like, then Jack and Elizabeth naming the child.
Right. And it would sort of fit in with their plot line because she now thinks she can't have kids. My wife pointed this out, that, like, the unspoken thing here is that gunshot she took to the abdomen made it impossible for her to have kids. Well, maybe this is her purpose, because remember, Jack has that whole speech to her about her purpose in life changing. This could change all of that and give her purpose in life to raise that kid. It would sort of bring that full circle.
Okay, that's a hot take. Yeah. Huh.
I hate it.
I do too, but you brought up really valid points that
The part that solidified it for me was the Beth Elizabeth thing. And I forgot about that. Like, that still makes a lot of sense. Like, Beth being named after her great aunt, not as much sense. Beth being named after a great grandma or whatever it works out to be, that makes more sense to me. R.I.P. Spencer, R.I.P. Alex.
I'll chew on that.
Sorry to ruin your day.
I'll let you know I'll let you know how I feel about that later in Slack.
Staff at tasteofcountry.com if you want to respond to that theory. I know it's a big one. And if you disagree, that's fine. I mean, certainly everybody disagreed with my theory that Alex never makes it to Montana. People hated that. Hated. Like, everybody's like, and they weren't mad at me. They were like, oh, if this happens, I'm never watching a Taylor Sheridan show ever again. Like, I'm turning off this show. This is garbage if he does that to us. I mean, he might not do that, but he might have another version of Pain coming your way.